You're jumping on.
Oh,
Okay,
there
I
we
see
go.
Allison, Claire, wonderful, Dorette, awesome. Great to see everybody
are
on
live.
here.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
you
Dorette.
are live. Yes, we are alive. Okay.
It's been a month, I think.
It's been a month,
Yeah,
yes.
we
did a live through, because we were 2 weeks ago, we were focusing on launching our online course
That's
through
right.
Wind Ministries, right? And so rather than going live this way, wonderful, from Halifax, awesome, Dorette. Rather than go live with prayer and prophetic ministry like we have been, Tracy and I went live talking about the issue of spiritual formation, and forming your inner life and becoming Christ-like. So we did that. It's not a touch screen. That won't ever get old.
Used to my really fancy
Yeah, yours
technology.
is fancier. Take a second and share the video. That's very helpful for us. I'm going to share it here as well. And we've got a couple things we want to talk about, and then we'll just figure out where we're going to go from there.
Yeah, we'll do some prayer.
Yes.
If you have questions about prophecy, words of knowledge, healing, the church, if you have questions, feel free to
questions.
write them in. I would actually be interested to know what kind of topics people want to hear more about.
Yeah.
Then we can use that to...
Yeah, that's a great point.
So if there's things that you're interested in learning more about or you're curious about, feel free to send a message or comment on the videos.
Yeah, if there's something that's just been bouncing around in your head and you've been trying to figure out, we like having those kind of conversations too, just exploring and seeing what it is that God is. One of our good friend Steve Schroeder, he says that God doesn't speak at spigots, he speaks like rain.
Right, because a spigot is that. I'm just remembering what a spigot is when we camp. The little tap?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he speaks everywhere to everybody, right? So he doesn't speak as spigots, just one little faucet that everybody has to go to. He speaks in rain everywhere to everybody.
I needed that to be explained.
Yes. So anyway, we'd love to know what has the Lord put on your heart and what you've been thinking about.
Yeah.
So great to see everybody. Great to see Dorothy again.
Yeah.
We saw Dorothy just a few minutes ago. She was leaving the church, so wonderful. First things first is you have a joke.
Oh, I don't want to. I don't.
Yeah, it's
I
a
don't,
great one. Okay, these people are going to love it.
I do
Erin
have a
has
joke, but
a
I've had to
joke
explain it to a lot of people.
that
So don't feel bad if you don't know it.
She's been laughing about this joke
For a couple weeks.
for a couple weeks. It's a pretty funny joke. This will just give you a snapshot into the humor that my wife appreciates.
The joke is, where did Napoleon hide his armies?
Hold on a sec. Wait. Guess, where did Napoleon...
He hid them in his sleeveys. Just... It's just weird to tell a joke to no one. Like a group of empty chairs.
I'm here and I appreciate it.
This has been really entertaining me.
Yes.
A lot. I'm easily entertained.
Yes. In his sleeveys. Because that's where your arms go, is in your sleeves. Yeah. And Napoleon was... What was Napoleon? Who was Napoleon?
He was a French general.
Good job.
Yeah. Let's move on.
We've had this conversation too. That's my part of this whole thing. Yes. Oh, you want to know more about Napoleon? I love history.
No, you're going to ruin the joke.
No, that's my part of the joke.
You're not part of the joke.
Okay, so welcome again to Tuesday Prophecy. One of the things we wanted to talk about today is just kind of what the Lord has been putting on our hearts lately, and just have a dialogue about that. And we'll just kind of see where that goes. So if you have questions, comment your questions. And actually, if you have if you have a dream, a shorter dream, you could post your dream, and we could talk about maybe interpret some dreams too.
Yeah, if there, I think maybe we have to say like 3 sentences or less. Or not.
Well,
Okay, never mind.
it's how does one differentiate a prophetic word and a promise? That's a good question. We'll get to that. So the topic we'll start off with. What constitutes, this is a broader topic, so we'll nail it down, but what constitutes healthy prophetic ministry? And
Yeah,
it's obviously a broad topic. But in that sense, we've talked about that a number of different times, right?
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things within that.
Yes, we had a whole live stream where we
do.
talked about weighing prophetic words, judging prophetic words, how we're to think through those things, the character that's required, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot when it comes to the broad scope of what constitutes healthy prophetic ministry. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and we were sharing just a little bit before we were going live, is healthy prophetic ministry requires a high view of the church. It's absolutely essential that prophetic ministry has a high view.
So what do you mean high view?
Okay.
Because
yes,
it's a little bit vague, or I think we could interpret that in a few different ways.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What I mean when I say high view of the church is to Christianity in general. Let's say Western Christianity, because I can comment most notably on Western Christianity. We're talking broad scope.
Simple way.
Yeah, broad scope.
Do you just mean like a love of the church?
A love of the church. Yes, a love of the church, but not a love of the church just because it's your community and place of belonging. Because that's one of the reasons people tend to love the church. There's nothing wrong with that either. Of course, the church is a community, and it is a place where we get a sense of belonging. That absolutely should be the case. But what I mean by a high view of the church is understanding the church as God's mission to manifest his power through people to transform the world.
Right.
And so a high view of the church is recognizing that this kind of what I mean, we tend to denigrate the corporate structure of it and all that kind of stuff, and I understand that.
Yeah.
We're responding to government tax laws and all that kind of stuff. We put stuff together in that, right? But beyond that, the spiritual meaning and force behind the collective gathering of people that represent the church, and we tend to think of.
Well, so what I hear you saying is we need to remember the reason that God created the church.
Yes.
Like, if I think of, I tend to view, I've talked about this a little bit, I tend to view the earth as, well, it's a war, we're told that. The writer of Hebrews talks about that.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual war. Our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities.
Yeah.
And we know that the earth is essentially, I view it as like in our universe, the world is a fallen planet. It's been taken over, right? We know this. So the church is part of the strategy, a piece of the strategy that God...
It's the strategy.
It's the strategy that God has created and put in place to set the captives free.
Yeah.
And so, like we can view I would say like community and belonging have a place within that structure.
Yeah,
but you're talking more about the bigger, broader view.
Ontologically.
The ontological view of the church, which would be, it's huge strategic.
It is. It's the reintroduction of the Garden of Eden to earth.
Yeah, there you go.
That is
great.
That is the role of the church.
Yeah.
And remember.
And that is what the prophetic is called to speak into.
Yes.
To the strategy.
Yeah.
The church.
Yes.
Which can look like encouragement,
yes.
hope. It can look like redirection or rebuke.
Right.
It can look like a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's all designed to uphold and move forward the strategic, bringing the Garden of Eden back, right?
Yes, so...
and joining with what Jesus did
on
the cross.
So looking at the context of 1 Corinthians 14, which lays out the protocol and scope of prophetic ministry, the ministry of the spiritual gifts, the ministry of the love gifts. I like to call them the love gifts. 1 Corinthians 14, verse 12 says this, as even so you, since you are zealous for spiritual gifts, you is plural, he's speaking to the gathering of the believers at Corinth, let it be for the edification of the church that you seek to excel. So, and that the context of that is that the scope of prophecy is for edification, exhortation, and comfort. That's 1 Corinthians 14:3. He who prophesies speaks edification, exhortation, and comfort to men. And then verse 12, even so, since you are zealous for spiritual gifts, let it be for the edification of the church that you seek to excel. So Paul is saying that those of you that are zealous for spiritual gifts, your focus should be on the building up and strengthening of the body of Christ.
Right.
That's the focus of those that earnestly desire and pursue spiritual gifts.
Right. The motivation for that is not just to have a cool gift.
Right.
That allows you to get validation and accolades, and the purpose of it, your motivation should be so that you can edify the church.
Right. And we betray our misunderstanding just in our common language. And it just hey Alvin, wonderful to see you on here. Excited for all your work that you're putting in on that book that you're working on. Great to see Ingrid too and Iris. Seeing just people jumping on. That's awesome. So we talk about my church, right? This is my church.
Yeah.
Or we talk about a church in relation to the pastor that oversees the church. And I was just saying that to our pastor here.
Right.
This is Andrew's church, right? Or Billy Arsenault and outside of Charlottetown, that's Billy's church.
Yeah.
Or there's Noel Mall, who's on the other side of Charlottetown, that's Noel's church.
And we split it into denominations.
And we split, so not only do we split it into whose church is it, we split it in denominationally. This is the Pentecostal assemblies.
We've compartmentalized.
Yes, we've compartmentalized everything and separated everything out so that we don't, and I understand the distinctions that we're making with all of that and the different ways we practice things. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing to have different modes of practice. Paul writes his letter to Romans, it's different than his letter to the church at Corinth, right?
Right, yeah.
So there's different emphases, different things people practice, different ways that they gather and say things, but we need to take a step back for a healthy display of the spiritual gifts and say, okay, this is a much bigger picture at play, and I think partly because largely in North America and in Western countries in general, we see the church has just been on this decline for at least the last 20 years, probably longer than that. It's been on this decline, and as an influencer in the culture, and it should be telling to us that, I've talked to a couple pastors that early on in the COVID lockdown, most political figures, it wasn't even a thought I shouldn't say most because I'm generalizing that. Of the pastors I've talked to, they've talked to their political representatives now a year into the thing. And this is anecdotal because it's a couple different stories, but it's true in different areas, disconnected, is the political leaders, it wasn't really like they said, what's the church saying about this?
Right.
What's the church doing about this?
You mean the political people weren't asking that?
Yes, the political people weren't asking that, yeah. They weren't looking to guidance from the church, from great leaders in the church or anything like that. In Canada and in America, the people that I've talked to, is now a year later that people in the church are going, hey, these lockdowns are really hurting us.
Right.
And the political leaders are going, well, you never came to us to talk about how we could work together. Right. And so there's just been this disconnect too, where generally the world, so to say, doesn't look at the church and go, here is a major force for good, and how are we influenced by that? And they have a perspective that we need desperately. Yeah. This is not a thought that exists today. And there would have been times in history where that thought did exist. And there
But
would
also
be,
times where it didn't.
yeah, of course,
Right?
yes. It just means
mean-
this distinct time it doesn't exist. There's been times that it did and it didn't, for sure. There's been times where emperors and kings sought out the counsel of major church leaders because they
Yeah.
needed to know what to do.
I think it's safe to say that both extremes have
Yes.
largely existed.
Yes.
There's been great persecution, and then there's been great favor.
Yeah, and we live in an age today where largely the voice of the church into the culture has been non-existent, into the world has been non-existent, and I suspect at its worst manifestation when it comes to prophetic ministry, since we're talking about prophecy, is that a large reason why you see prophetic voices pointing their aim at political figures and countries is because subconsciously we just don't think the church is going to accomplish anything. And so I don't actually even address proverbially, I don't even address the church because what good does it do?
Right.
It's not actually going to change anything. And I suspect that may be part of the reason why you see so much of prophetic ministry pointed towards.
And you mean this in a very broad
Yes.
brush view, right?
Yes.
Because there's probably exceptions.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
sure there are
I
exceptions.
know exceptions.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I
as
know.
a very, very, well, I just want to clarify that you're speaking in very general terms.
If you were to do a cursory search through Facebook posts and YouTube videos about prophetic ministry, you would find a much higher ratio of people prophesying about political outcomes
Yes.
than they would be prophesying about direction for churches and what's happening in the kingdom of God and how we're strategies for impacting people, this kind of stuff.
Right.
And that, to me, that is a much more systemic problem
Right.
than just saying, oh, we need to do some better teaching or training or something like that. There's been a large shift away from, like, I'm just thinking of prophetic words from even 20, 30 years ago. In the last 5 years, there's been a significant and dramatic shift away from how we're to respond to what's happening around us in the sense of prophetic ministry in large. A lot of things, thinking of people like John Paul and even Bob Jones prophesying, this is what's going to happen. We need to prepare ourselves, right?
Right. Yeah.
And into, these are all the world events that are going to happen. And these are all the political figures that are going to be elected, and this is what's going to happen here. And I've actually gone through and tried a number of times reading these things, and gone, I want help to point my prayer in a helpful way, or how do I respond? And all I see is China's going to do this, and North Korea's going to do this, and this technology is going to be developed here, and this technology is going to be developed here, and I'm going, that doesn't do it. That doesn't help me.
Right.
In any way implement the kingdom of God in my own personal life, and then broadly speaking in the community that I'm involved in. And so that's what I mean is a high view of the church is required because the place where God intends to dwell, rule, and reign and release his presence is his church, his bride. The thing he's drawn near to him, right? The thing he came to set up and establish and to wed himself to. And I think we're going to get all kinds of offshoots in regards to the ministry of spiritual gifts. And as long as it exists, that we go, the church is unimportant to us.
So, let me ask a question. You've presented a huge problem.
Yep.
So to me, as an individual, there's nothing I can do about this.
Right.
This is a huge, overwhelming problem that I'm either going to ignore
Right.
because it's too overwhelming.
Right.
And what am I going to do as a person, like an individual?
Right.
Or I need some personal solutions that I can personally implement to help shift,
Yeah,
guide.
for sure. For
so
sure.
maybe do you want to talk about that?
Yes.
Well, you know
No,
me. I always need to
I
make
know.
things
It's-
practical because what happens with pick a problem.
So if only
Pick a problem in the world.
someone commented
it's-
on my Facebook post about this new course that we have out,
Yeah.
right? A good friend of mine.
Yeah.
and she said that I'm a great communicator.
Yeah.
And what she doesn't know is just how much you'd have to point my communication in much better ways.
Well, I'm just
So,
adding to it.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's very true.
This is
It's,
always how we've worked. So I
yeah.
bring the practical. Make this applicable.
So if I'm trying to communicate
Otherwise, it
something,
feels too big and it feels overwhelming.
if I'm trying to communicate something, I do think occasionally, you probably don't know this, what would my wife ask me to say about this? Yeah, because you do that in a very helpful way.
Yeah.
So
Well, we want to distill these things down
Yeah.
because this is the same problem with, okay, here's a country, an impoverished country, here's the
Right.
huge problem. Well, most of us turn away, not because we don't care,
Yeah.
not because we don't want change or we don't want to help. It's because people have presented a problem
yeah,
that is so enormous that it's so overwhelming we
Right.
we don't know what to do, so it's easier to look away because there's nothing
yeah,
to
it's
do.
true.
And so this is a big problem.
Yeah,
One thing that I'm thinking of while you're talking is a story that John Thomas told us on a call with him recently. He shared a story about, it was him on the plane, right, with the Satanist and the fasting.
well, I might have been on my other call when he.
Okay, I'm
yeah.
gonna say it was John on the plane. I might be wrong, but for the sake of this, I'll just go with that. And so John shares this story where I don't think he was on the plane. Someone's on an airplane, a pastor or maybe John Thomas.
John Thomas
and
is the director of Streams
Yes.
International. So he took over after John Paul passed away.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well-regarded,
Yes.
like awesome
Good
person.
friend. Yeah.
So this pastor or him is on an airplane and notices like they're serving all the food to everyone. It's a long flight, and a few aisles up, he notices a man who, I think it must have been a long flight, so he notices that the whole time the man has turned down all offers of food, snacks, and drinks. So he's not eating or drinking anything, and he thinks, oh, interesting. I wonder if he's fasting. And so at some point, he went over and he asked the man, I noticed these things. I'm just wondering, like, are you fasting? And the guy says to him, oh, actually, yes, I am. And he, I guess, kind of assumes he's a Christian and says, like, oh, that's so great. I'm a Christian too. However they talk. And the guy looks at him and goes, oh, sorry. You're mistaken. I'm not a Christian. In fact, I belong to the Church of Satan, and I think it's like every whatever day, we collectively fast and pray for the downfall of the Christian church. Right? And
Doesn't surprise me.
John goes, okay, so as Christians, he looks to our group, like on this Zoom call, and goes, how many of you are regularly fasting for the success and for God to speak and use your leaders?
Yeah.
And we're all like, you know. And so, I mean, it was convicting.
Right,
And
of course.
And he was just talking about how, like you mentioned it, we're really good at denigrating our own church
Yes.
or dissecting. We dissect
Right.
leadership structures, and we dissect theological standpoints. We
Right.
dissect the buildings and the setup and how organic it is, how structured. I mean,
All of it.
pick your thing.
Yeah.
Someone has dissected it.
Really good at
and-
pointing out problems.
But how often are we collectively praying and fasting, sacrificing something, petitioning the Lord for the success and fulfillment of his church?
Right. Right.
I think the answer is probably not very favorable
Yeah. I would
towards
agree.
us.
Yeah.
And so I hear what you're saying, though, and I think back to that and I go, okay, well, that is something I can do
Right.
as a believer, right? I can fast and pray for something for the church.
Yeah. Choose one day a week.
My
Yeah.
personal church that I attend, the greater church,
Yeah.
So that's a practical
Yeah, that is very,
practical
yeah, and
thing, right?
that's an excellent point. Is choose a day during the week
Yeah.
to dedicate to fasting and praying for your local assembly and then the broader church as well. I think one of the things I would also say is stop church hopping to people. Just
But what if we're offended? Well, I'm being really
I know.
sarcastic now.
Just stop.
But that's why we do it, right?
Yeah, that's why we do
I
it.
mean,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
being facetious, but
You never learn to love if you leave every time someone
Yeah.
annoys you.
yeah.
I mean, just imagine if you treated your families like that. That's just, and
Or
there are
the-
people that do, right?
Yeah.
So stop church hopping, and seek God, ask God to give you a love for His people, and ask Him to fill you. And it's not so much that you need to work up this great amount of love for other people. It should be the natural overflow of love for Him, which is what He says to Peter. Now, not all of us are, of course, as spiritual as Peter, but He says to Peter, "If you love me, feed my sheep." So connected His love for Jesus to the mission Peter was given.
Right.
And so develop a love for God that allows you to love people, regardless of where they are, and regardless of how offended you are. So stop church hopping. Ask God to fill you with His love for people, not so much you trying to love people, but His love for people. Spend some time fasting and praying, maybe weekly. Maybe it's a one meal. Maybe it's a lunch once a week that you do something like that. And look at yourself. Do this 5 minutes a day. Consider yourself as part of a broader narrative that God's telling on earth.
Right.
Just think of yourself that way for 5 minutes a day. That I'm part of something much bigger than just my personal sphere, and in regards to the kingdom of God.
Right. Right.
And don't, when you think of another church in your local area, catch the thought that goes, "We're better than them,"
Right.
and instead reverse that thought to, "I bless them."
Yeah.
So just simple things. Those aren't even complicated things to do. Those are simple things
Yeah.
to do. And just shifting our frame of reference for what we think about when it comes to the local representation of the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And, I know there's people out there that are saying, well, they basically want to burn down the whole system of thinking about church, and they use different terms like ecclesia and things like that. And I mean, I get it. I don't necessarily think it's the most helpful thing to do. And I think they're doing that because they recognize the problem and they're trying to find a solution.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a solution needs to be so dramatic as that. I think, Allison, or all day, yes. I say 5 minutes so you can actually start somewhere.
Yeah.
And because most people, we just need,
We need to be realistic.
we need to be realistic about where we're starting.
Yeah, so that we don't get discouraged.
Some people are going to be farther along with that. Some people are going to be, it's going to take more time. It's leaving the place God has you as easily as we tend to do, because our options are so great, never allows us to develop a deep-rooted love for the people God's placed us around. It just doesn't.
Do you see Lauren's comment here?
I saw it in
the
brief.
online function makes it easier to church hop. Oh, come back. Makes it easier to church hop or multi-church, but I think it's also nice to see people loving people who attend all kinds of churches and being friends with all churches, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I think it's a both and situation, because that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
I think it can become problematic if you don't ever go beyond that level, though.
Yes.
If you never commit to this group of people around you.
Yes, exactly.
Because an online anything, in my opinion, and this is very much my opinion, is never going to be a good enough replacement for real, on the ground community.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people that will disagree with that statement, but I stand by it. And I think especially in regards to church, it's a both. So it's not like what Lauren's comment isn't wrong. I would never say that.
Yeah.
I think that we need to, it's a both and.
Yeah, and it can
Like
be,
you're saying, there's
yes.
something in learning to love the people around you.
It can
and
be
then
as simple.
walking together and
Absolutely.
learning from one another. And I mean, our internship, we did a full-time ministry school internship
For 4 years.
for 4 years. So there was a whole group of us, 20 to 40 people at any given time, and we all we lived in a couple separate houses, so it was close quarters, and we're doing everything together all the time.
Yeah.
And there was, I mean, it
Lots
was
of time for friction.
lots of time for friction, like zillions of opportunities to be offended, and therefore zillions of opportunities to learn to get over ourselves.
Yeah.
Like it was a great opportunity to learn, like when you are doing outreach and you are sitting on a team with people and there's a group of people off the street who don't know the Lord out there waiting to come in, and you are feeling really angry and offended towards the person sitting with you on a team.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to hear the Lord for this person
That's right.
coming
Yeah,
in.
that's very true.
And so you
Yeah.
are forced into the choice and you have, let's say, 60 seconds to make this decision
Right.
because someone's coming in. Am I going to cater to my offense because so-and-so beside me maybe even legitimately said something rude to me at
Yeah.
breakfast? So am I going to cater to that? That's an option. Or am I going to recognize that there could be a million reasons why they did that? I haven't actually said anything to them, so they may not even know.
Yeah.
And here comes this person who God has brought to speak something. So am I going to cater to the Lord's Spirit, or am I going to cater to the offense of my soul?
Yeah.
And you have a minute to make that choice.
Yeah. If
And
that.
if that. And in
Yeah.
4 years, I can honestly say that, like, I think most of the time I made the right choice to cater to the Spirit, but I definitely didn't always. And some of my worst encounters, and by worst I mean where I just didn't get anything, where I missed something huge, or, were when I chose to sit in my own offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also say, because I have retrospect on my side, that all the times I chose to just say, you know what, I'm going to let this go. I'm not even
Right.
going to bring it up to this person. And guess
Right.
what? I survived.
Yeah.
And so did they. And nothing terrible happened.
Yeah.
I moved on. They may or may not even know
Yeah.
what they did, but it didn't actually, like, all it did was set me up to hear the Lord better.
Right.
Right? But we feel
Yeah.
sometimes like we need to address things. And I mean, sometimes we do, obviously. But being in
For
these
sure.
positions, my point is, being in community gives you an opportunity to even learn to discern when are the times that I do need to bring something up with a person.
Yeah.
And when are the times when I actually can let this go and say, you know what? Yeah, that hurt me, but I wonder if maybe like something is going on with them that I don't know.
Yeah.
There's times for both, and you really can't learn it. You kind of have to walk it out. And so in community, you get all those chances,
Right.
And
Absolutely.
when we take away community, even uncomfortable community, we really sell ourselves short, and we take away a lot of opportunities for the Lord to teach us,
Right.
like what to do with offense. It's complicated. It's
Right.
not always so simple, and so you need opportunity to learn it. Like you need to go
Right.
to school in a sense, and that's what community is. And I think the online aspect that Lauren's talking about is really cool for expanding our view, our mindset,
Sure.
right? Because we can engage with all different denominations, and we can see people all over the world worshiping God. That's so
Yeah.
encouraging.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge place for that. And then I think we need to always make sure we come back to a community so that we put ourselves in places where God can teach us and train us, so that when we
Yeah.
pray things to him like, God, I know I need more patience. Can you help me? Well, he is going to help you, and he's going to help you by putting you in positions where you get to learn patience.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to help you by making you be impatient and giving you the chance to wrestle through that and learn something really valuable.
I love Dorothy's comment. And possibly there's something going on in me that takes offense where there was none given. Yeah, that happens quite often.
100%,
Yeah,
Dorothy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then being in community, you can take that and go, what, at streams we used to say, like, okay, there's a button. What's the button?
Yeah, that's right.
What does God want to do with the button? Because it's usually an invitation for your healing. Like, it's not about this other person. It's about you and what God wants to do in your heart.
Proverbs says, there is a proverb. It's actually right where it's the verse before or after the verse for iron sharpens iron. It says, as water reflects the face, so the heart of man to man.
As water, yes.
As water reflects the face, so the heart of man to man. So, and what essentially that means is that what I read into the hearts of others is actually a reflection of my own heart.
Yeah, and
Jesus said that.
That can be a brutal one if
Yeah.
what you're seeing is negative everywhere.
Yeah. Jesus said, you look at your brother and you see a speck in his eye.
Yeah.
All the while without realizing you have a log in your own eye.
Yeah.
And so essentially what he's saying is that the log in your own eye is causing you to look askance at your brothers and sisters and assume things that are there that are actually far more prevalent in your own life.
Yeah.
So a speck is a much smaller thing than a log, and you make a giant thing out of a speck rather than dealing with your own log.
Yeah.
And he says, that's in the context of that is judge not lest you be judged. And then he says, go ahead and judge once you do that.
Right.
You've removed the log, because when you remove the log,
Yeah.
you tend to look at people with specks in compassion because you remember the process and the journey and the hurt and the pain it caused you.
Right. AKA you have humility.
Yeah.
And we would call that verse projection.
Yes.
That would be
projection.
in our society, we would
Yeah.
call that projection or denial.
Yeah.
But projection, I think, would be
Those are much harder to...
my daily struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
We're with you, Jen.
Yes.
I understand.
Those are much harder
Yeah.
to practice in an online community.
Yes.
Well, because with an online community, a Zoom meeting, one person talks at a time. Mm-hmm. Not everybody interacting and I have a lot of latitude for what constitutes a quote unquote church.
Yeah.
And I know there's some that wouldn't have nearly as much latitude. It's got to look like this. Especially thinking of some of my studies in what the Eastern Orthodox writers have written. You're really not part of the church unless you're part of an Eastern Orthodox church. And I just, obviously have a lot of latitude. So I would think everywhere from your typical evangelical church of 50 to 100 people to your house churches that are being planted across the nation of India, our friends there that have maybe 5 to 10 people gathering,
Yeah.
to Joel Osteen's 1,000,000 people
Yeah.
coming together. I've got a lot of latitude for what it looks like to belong and participate. Each version has its strengths and weaknesses.
For sure.
But finding a place where God has planted you, and learning to love the people in the midst of that.
And the
sticking
people
that out.
around you to help teach you are not relegated to people in your church.
Yeah.
Like, it's literal.
Yes.
It's like your neighbors and
Yeah.
the people in the grocery store, the people on the road, the other, like, it's the people, it's the literal people around you.
And we've been married for this will be 12 years
Yep.
in August. And so that I've lived this principle out time and time again, is I don't think you can leave somewhere unless you're being led somewhere.
Right.
I don't think I don't think, and that's been hard for us to walk out.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can leave somewhere unless you're being led somewhere.
And you're not just meaning, because people know we moved.
Yes.
So that is an example. But I know you would apply this to a job.
Yes.
to a church.
Yes.
Like you said, don't church hop, but there is a place for moving to a different church.
Yes.
Like, but
yeah.
right. But I'm just saying this.
In all things, be led by the Father.
You're applying this principle in a microcosm and a macro.
Yes.
Like you're extending it to all the things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to leave, be able to tell me. And I've got lots of friends that I've talked to about this. If you're going to leave, you need to be able to tell me where God's leading you.
Yeah.
Not just that God's telling you to leave, because I don't think God just tells you to go into a vacuum.
Right.
And we go into vacuums because we are immature and we need to be formed and grow.
Yeah.
And we stumble into them, and God's
Yeah.
grace brings us into them.
And I would say, usually, speaking from my own life and people I've walked with, when we end up in a vacuum, it's because we left because we were running away.
Yeah.
That's when we run away
Yes.
from things, which I've done. I think a lot of us
Right.
have. We end up in a vacuum. That's why
Right.
when you run away, it doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
And it lends itself to confusion and maybe
Right.
depression, discouragement, all that thing.
Right.
All those things. It doesn't work.
Yeah, even
you know?
practically going through 6 months into COVID lockdown and going, where are we going to earn income from?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Maybe we should go pack things up and go to California for a few months.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out all these things. What are we going to do? And the constant refrain, that this just to show that this is the principle we live by, is unless the Father's leading us,
Yeah.
then it's all just wishful thinking. And
Yeah, it's all just like strategic
you can
thinking.
I don't have a problem
but-
with strategizing.
Yeah.
But until the Father says do this and makes it clear
Yeah.
that it's doing this, that you're to do this, then all the strategic thinking about
Dorothy.
we've got my family in California, so maybe it'd be good to
Yeah,
go
it's
there.
practical and logical.
We've got friends in Texas, and we would go spend some time
Yeah.
down there because it's more open. But the Father was never clear on any one of
Yeah.
those things. So we can't leave to go somewhere. And not clarifying, just meaning like if school's going to be canceled, then we'll go
Yeah.
away for a little while. Then anyway, we were thinking through that as like, how do we survive for the next couple of months if there's no financial income for us? And thankfully, the Lord provided time and time again, and He was very clear that no, you're here, and
Yeah.
and there was a lot that we needed to do
Well, and even
in relation to
that
us being here.
is something we engaged our wise, our group of people,
Yeah.
like our wise council community.
Right.
And because living this way, what it will do is it's very difficult to be led by God without trusting God.
It's impossible.
You can't do it.
Yeah, it's impossible.
So if you are someone who has trust issues with the Lord, which is me, I wouldn't say they're extreme, but here, it would be another topic, but there's parts of the heart that your heart can be divided, right? There can be parts that most of me has so much trust and faith in the Lord,
Yeah.
but there are some small parts that don't, because they
Yeah.
don't know better.
Yeah.
And so when you put yourself in a position to be led by God, those areas are going to speak up. And you
Right.
will realize, there's still, and there are reasons for that. There are
Right.
valid reasons that I feel that way.
Right.
Valid in the sense of like legitimate wounds.
Right.
But the great thing is that when you're in community and you have your people going, okay, well, here's the principle you want to live by. They could speak it into, remember?
Right.
This is who you are.
Right.
So I understand you're feeling that way, but let's work on healing and working through that and not
Right.
cater to those wounds by fabricating that God is pushing you somewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well,
And that's another
yeah.
outworking of community, though, is then you have people that are safe to go to who are compassionate but also don't enable
Right.
that, right? Because they know me. They know that's not my desire. My desire is for God to reveal my heart to me. As like David says, right, in whatever psalm it is, search my
Right.
heart and know me. David
Right.
recognizes he doesn't know his whole heart.
Right. Well,
right?
yeah,
There's mysteries, there's
Right.
parts we don't know. Being led by God allows us to find and engage those pieces and ultimately bring them and reconcile them with the Lord.
Right. Well, and so like for just the personal example, thinking about maybe, when we were saying, well, maybe we'll go to California from September to December, we were thinking about that. If we can't earn an income, and we can go stay with my family. And so we chatted with Andrew about that, our pastor. We chatted with my own dad about that. We chatted with dear friends that have some oversight and insight into our lives. And, just like, maybe this is what we'll need to do to survive for 3 or 4 months. And nothing ever felt right with any of those people.
Yeah.
Right? It was none of them were like evil, awful idea or anything like that. Right? It was
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay,
Well, but,
And then-
they
but-
held us to the principles.
But they
that
held
we
us to the
live
principles.
by.
And what the Father continued to speak to us about
Yeah.
was the things we're involved in. So, for instance, with that, I was involved with preaching through the book of Mark with Andrew, right? And so he continued to speak to me about that. And then other things, I went and spoke at the PAOC Leaders Conference, which the church sent me off to do that. Went off to Newfoundland. So there was all these things that God was speaking to us about that were like, okay, well, obviously that was not a God idea.
Yeah.
It was planning through, and I have no problem with planning in that way, but I need to be led by God in what I'm doing. Otherwise, it's just a fanciful idea.
Yeah. So your point is that God didn't go silent.
No, he didn't go silent. He continued to speak about the
just
things we were
didn't
already doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And that in itself
so I'm
is
that
him
is
speaking.
exactly. So I'm following him
Yeah.
moment by moment, and he continues to speak through all of these
Yeah.
different ways, right?
Sometimes we want him to answer a question or speak to a circumstance so badly that we miss the fact that his silence on that particular issue
Right,
isn't, like, that in itself is a no.
right. I would have
Right?
loved for him to say
'Cause
yes.
he's
Go
talking
spend 3
over
months with
here.
your family. I haven't seen my family in 2 years now.
Yeah.
I would have loved for him to say that. My mom
Yeah.
was supposed to be here when the lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So I would love for that to be the case because I'd
Right.
get to see them all. And it's been forever
Yes.
that I've been able to see him. But God continued to speak and we continue to follow.
Yeah.
You can't leave somewhere without being led somewhere.
Yeah.
And otherwise you're going into a vacuum.
Well,
It's
and when you
just-
are led and you know that you are, it also gives you something to stand on.
Yeah.
When
that's
and
right.
if things get difficult, you can go, okay, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I feel XYZ, but I
Right.
can look back and I can say, God led me here, therefore, he will take care of me.
Right.
He will keep me secure. He will provide for me.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus said that, like, the sparrows don't worry about where they're going to sleep or what they're going to eat. Like,
Yeah.
someone wrote this. I don't know, guys. Someone said it in the Bible, right?
You're mixing a bunch of verses
I know, this
together
is
that
what
all
I do.
mean that. So
They
that's
all
good.
mean, I get the meaning, right? But I get the execution bad. I'm working on it.
It's good. No,
Right? But
yeah.
if God takes care of even this tiny bird, how much more will he take care
Yeah.
of you, is the point.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get there.
No,
See,
you're
we all have a
firmly in
thing.
you're firmly in the Sermon on the Mount. It's basically the Passion Translation
Okay.
or the Message. You just kind of threw it together and paraphrased it.
Yeah, it's my own. It's in there. The concept is in there.
I'm just laughing at my own joke about the
Yeah.
Passion
I think
Translation.
my joke was funnier.
Okay, I don't have a problem with the Passion Translation. Just
Let's
here's
maybe
here's my
do-
side note. Just don't call it a translation. It's not a
Okay,
translation.
We're not going down
Okay.
that. I'm
Yes.
shutting that down.
Yeah, there. Susan Wakefield that's one of the ones. So foxes have holes, but the Son of Man doesn't have a place to lay his head.
See, thank you,
Yeah.
Susan.
Okay, so we have the question that we haven't addressed yet.
What's the question?
Was it Lauren or Allison asked the question? There, Lauren.
Oh, I have a question.
How does one here? I will ask you the question.
Oh, I don't know if I know the
I have a
answer.
question. How does one differentiate a prophetic word and a promise? It's just think of it this way. It's Steve's.
Just answer.
question and response. You don't have to
What?
answer it. You just have to respond to it.
I don't even know what that means. I don't know what you just said to me. Confused.
Yeah, Lauren, we're talking. What I'm specifically talking about is location. I'm talking about churches, the place God has planted you to be
Oh, I
and to
see.
love and
Right.
to spend yourself. I'm not talking about relationships and discovering who God has created you to be united with. I'm not talking about that.
That's
So
a good
that's a good clarifying
clarification.
point. Yes, I would never say to someone, you
Wait
can't
for a
leave your
new
boyfriend until you
boyfriend.
have a new one.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that. I'm
It's a
saying,
really good clarifying point,
yeah,
though.
the narrowness of the application right now
Mm-hmm.
is we're talking about the community that you're called to,
Mm-hmm.
the people that you're called to, and the way in which you're called to touch them. That's the scope of the statement. And the application of that is God won't lead you to a new place.
Yeah, places.
Yeah, God won't
Not,
tell you to leave one unless He's
Yeah.
leading you to another. Yes. Yeah, so good clarification, Lauren.
okay. Why don't you answer the prophetic word versus a promise?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is that there's not necessarily, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
You've got, I guess one of the differences will be a prophetic word generally should be more specific to the individual than a promise, which would broadly apply to many people.
To me, the promises of God would be things that are written in the Word,
Yes.
like that are like the Bible.
Yes.
I would call those things the promise.
Yes.
Demonstrated by Jesus.
I will never again flood the world.
Right. Those to me
Promise.
would be the promises.
Right.
Like, and then a prophetic word is God speaking through
Yes.
man.
I will lead you, I will guide you. I will, I'm thinking
Yes,
Isaiah
yeah.
53, 54, and 55, prophesying
Yeah.
the promise of God coming in flesh as Jesus.
Or I
Promise.
never change.
Yeah, I never change.
That
yeah.
would be a promise.
Promises are often tied to the nature of God.
Yeah.
They don't change.
And a prophetic word is coming through man.
Yes.
It's God speaking through man. The promises are, they are God.
Yeah.
Like they're established in Him, and and we would find them in Scripture. They're
Yeah,
not.
I'll never leave you or forsake you.
Yeah.
I follow me and I'll take care of you. That kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Fear not, I'm your shield and exceedingly great reward. Even though that said to Abraham, that kind of thing is said
Yeah.
a number of times throughout Scripture. So you've got promises being broadly applicable, and then prophecies being specifically applicable.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
So God could speak something to you that He wants you to do.
Yes.
And that wouldn't necessarily apply to me. Obviously being married, that's a little bit different. Or to Colby, who's managing our live stream right now. What he speaks to you about your life is not the same application
Right.
to Colby's life.
If it's uncomfortable or inconvenient for our soul, it could be a sign to stay and be transformed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you say, Father, what do you want me to do? Are you opening a door for me to move to this place or to do this other thing?
Yeah.
Or are you silent on the issue? If you're silent on the issue,
Yeah.
my goal is to be led by Him.
Because Lauren, what you're saying, it could be both. It's not enough information.
Yeah.
Your soul feeling uncomfortable and inconvenient is something, but it wouldn't be enough. I would say it's not enough to make that kind of decision.
Right. No, not even close.
And I mean, usually, if you're thinking this way, you can ask yourself, if my soul is uncomfortable, well, how is it uncomfortable? Right? Like you can do a bit of dissection there. Am I feeling offended? Like, are there buttons being pushed? Okay, well then there's work to be done. Great.
Right.
You can lean into that. And if you are feeling like, oh, maybe it is, I'm being led somewhere else, it's a great time to start asking the Lord for some confirmation. Start praying
Yeah.
into that. Go to your wise people, ask them, and then wait. That's the fun part.
Yeah,
Then you
that's
wait,
right.
But I think that would be a sign that there's room for exploration, but it's not enough to go one way or the other.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, it's like John Paul would say with getting signs, like when you ask for confirmation, I'm trying to think of an example. When we were in the internship and Josh and I were not dating yet, but there was that awkward, like, will they, won't they? I was quite irritated with him.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. And so I would pray about this, and I would be like, yeah, you know, I think I'm done. Because I was, to be honest, very happy to be single and not get married or anything. It's just where I was at. And inevitably, that day, I would go for a walk or something and see like 3 cars with California license plates, which this is not in the States. This is in Richmond, BC.
And obviously I'm from California.
There's
Yeah.
not, it's not a normal thing to
No.
see. But that also was not enough to go, this is the man I'm going to marry. It started to get interesting, though, when that same thing happened like 10 times. And so I remember
Right.
John Paul saying, like, if you get someone asked, what if I'm seeing signs? And he's like, well, you know, if it's like an angel showing up in your room and tells you to do something, you're going to do it. Because now if you don't, that's disobedience.
Right.
But if you have like one small thing, like seeing a license plate, meh, okay, interesting, but it's not enough. Now if you see 50 license plates, now
Right.
we're talking about something.
Right.
Right? Like much so you learn to, I don't know. I'm not sure why I'm talking about this.
No, it's a good point. You look at the broad scope of what
Right,
God's
learning to
revealing
leave
you.
or not.
Yeah.
So if God's going to lead you somewhere, it's not going to be through one small thing.
Yeah.
But if you start to if all the small things start adding up,
Right.
then you start to look at it.
Not and by small things you don't mean small problems you have with the place you are.
No,
Small indications
Yeah.
that God is saying this place,
Like
this
I remember
place,
at the internship, one of the women there, she was Swedish, and she had done the internship in New Hampshire in the States, and she was praying about, should I go back to Sweden or should I go and be a leader at this new internship they're starting in Canada?
Right.
Because she needed to know, should I extend, do I need to apply for visas, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And you know, they went to some conference, I think, and a person came up to her and was like, you know, I kind of felt like I was supposed to give you this pencil. Really random, but she takes the pencil and what's on it? A bunch of maple leaves, and it says Canada. And she's like, okay, that's interesting. So ultimately what ended up happening is she was given like 4 things from random people who don't know her that had Canadian symbols on them. And she started seeing like maple leaves, like a red, you know, the Canadian
Right.
leaf all over the place. And that was enough for her to go,
God's speaking to me.
and then she started having a desire to go, and all these kind of things, right?
See all the you take the full scope of it and go, God's leading me somewhere
Exactly.
based on all these smaller signs.
They all added up to
Yeah.
something much larger, but she wasn't like, well, these things really annoy me about this internship.
Right.
Even though there probably were things that she didn't love.
Right.
There's always things that maybe aren't our favorite.
One of these sessions we'll have to talk about what's the difference. We don't
We
have
have
time.
only 1 minute.
We'll talk about what's the difference between being led by your soul and being led by your spirit.
I
because
mean, that's really what this
that's
all
really
comes
what
down
it boils
to.
down to. Yeah.
We didn't prophesy over anyone.
Well, I think we shared things
Yeah.
that would probably land in helpful ways over people.
Yes.
Unless you have anything for anybody.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are at basically time. You know, maybe we have 30 seconds. Any final thoughts?
That's too much pressure now. I'm just kidding. I want to pray. I just pray a blessing over everyone listening and everyone watching, that that God would speak to all of us and show us our place and our piece, what that looks like. Like, what's our piece in this huge church? That God would just continue
in the kingdom of God.
in the kingdom of God. And one of the promises would be that when we enter into this kingdom, our minds are renewed.
Yeah.
And so I just bless that process in everyone, that you would be strong in the renewing of your mind, that would be continuing. And so I just bless that process to be happening, to be that it would like sink in, I guess. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what I'm trying to say, but I'm
No,
kind
that's
of just
good.
feeling something on, like, because we're talking about shifting a mindset and shifting a paradigm. And so I pray that our eyes would be more and more opened to what the kingdom of God means, what it looks like, and what it means for you in your home.
Yeah.
That God would speak to you about your ways that you can join into that
Yeah.
larger church, like the fullness of the church. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just yes. And then I want to make
Yeah.
this mention too, because we didn't even.
Amen.
Yeah, the amen is Susan Wakefield. She commented, then there's full-on demonic attack from a broken individual that still requires extreme love and forgiveness, compassion in the midst of a big explosion of hurt. Absolutely.
Yes.
And even that is not a reason to leave.
Yeah.
That's a reason to involve other people in the process and to go to wise counselors and
Seek a
leaders
lot of
and seek
wisdom.
wisdom and bring other people into how to
Yeah.
navigate that for sure. But that's not a reason to leave a community. That's a reason.
Alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
alone, yes. Yeah. Now if there's 10 people in this and it's a small community and every one of them's doing that,
Yeah.
then
Oh, there absolutely are
Yes.
legitimate reasons to leave,
Yeah.
in the negative. There's a difference between being offended and annoyed by small things
Yeah.
and being like there's actual sin and like unrighteousness
Yeah.
openly happening. Like
Yeah.
that's another topic,
yeah,
but
that is, and it's
that would be different. That's not what we're
There's
talking
the
about.
difference between, and yeah, we'll have to get to this another time. The difference between not liking how things are doing
Yeah.
and how people are doing things and open, unrepentant sin.
Yeah.
Those are, people tend to
Conflate them.
conflate the two
Yeah.
of them. Yes, they conflate them based on whether they want which one they want it to be.
Yeah. And that's why we need
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
Following the
truly.
Father. It
Yeah.
really
We really just
boils
need
down
wisdom.
to how do I receive from him and how am I led by him and how am I
Absolutely.
becoming like him. Really boils down to that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we will end for today and maybe pick this up. Maybe we should not call it prophecy, words of knowledge and healing, but we should start calling it how to live, flow, and move in the kingdom of God.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so thanks for jumping on. Thanks for listening to us ramble on and on and on.
Yeah.
And we hope that you guys gleaned something helpful from that. And thank you for all your comments and your kind words. And we will see you next time in 2 weeks.
Yes. We're
Yep.
back. Bye.